Good day, everyone. My name is Luke. I'm your host today. So today we are going to talk about the USAID being cut towards many African countries. So I'm going to mainly focus my interest in what are going to be the implications of cutting USAID to Africa, mainly in mining, because my previous topics I've been talking about mining in Africa and how best can our education system be resuscitated and developed into a position whereby we can produce practitioners that can take the mining industry forward. Because currently we have lots of mines in Africa, but they are not in the hands of Africans. In other words, we are just the custodians of the land, but not benefiting much from the resources on the land and in the land. Okay. So currently there is a lot of panic across Africa, mainly in sub-Saharan Africa, after President Donald Trump said that the United States are going to cut USAID to Africa in many parts of the world. So countries like Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi, South Africa, Lesotho, Namibia, Angola, there is no doubt that there is going to be an effect or an impact. Right. So now, as our governments are looking for ways on how to reduce the effects or the impacts of such a move by the United States of America, there are two ways that our governments can take. Another one, I will call it a short-term quick fix method, but that method is not sustainable. Then there is the long-term, painful, but if done properly well, it can be sustainable in the future. Right. So some of the things that are going to be cut that African countries were benefiting from USAID include things like family planning pills for our ladies, the ARVs, also food donations, especially in drought affected areas. USAID has been providing food in many of these areas every year, right, for a number of years. Then there are also water projects that are being used for irrigation. I can remember in some parts in Zimbabwe, in the lower Gori area, there are USAID projects that are there, right? And also, if you go to Buhera area, Chiazo area, there are also some USAID food donations that have been done in these areas for a number of years. Right? So all these things are going to be cut. Right? So, as we all know that Africa is a hub, it's full of resources, and all continents, they are always trying to get a piece of Africa. So when we are going through a crisis like this, I can safely say that there will be scramble for African resources by other countries trying to come and help. But the help is not a free ticket. It's being done, or it will be done for a payment. So the quick fix strategy number one will be turning to the Chinese. For the Chinese to come and start donating the family planning pills, to continue the water projects for irrigation, to do food donations, to donate ARVs, etc. Right? But as we all know, the Chinese never go to bed with any country, and when they are not the winners. They don't go into fair deals. At the end of the day, they are the winners. Okay, for now I want us to listen to this clip on the Chinese deal with the Zambian government. Listen to this.
The Zambian government, Bishop, sold the copper mines in northern Zambia to an outside consortium for $25 million. The copper mines for $25 million because they couldn't manage to keep them. The company that came in and took over the Zambian copper mines in 3 months made a profit of $75 million. They did not pay the Zambian government upfront in cash for the mines. They were going to pay them over a period of time. Here we have this company that has an understanding of how things work, raised the money at the government's expense, took money that the company should have, the government should have been making, and gave it back to the government and said, we paid our debt in full, and give them now 0.006% of the proceeds of copper mining. When right outside the door there's people in poverty, people in not eating, people ignorant, people dying, high levels of AIDS, and what's the deal?
Okay, I think you've heard it clear, right? What kind of a deal is this? That you sell the future for 20 million, for 30 million, or 40 million. And these Chinese guys, they recover this money in less than a month. Right. So, we talk more about the Chinese, right? So the Chinese will come, they will donate all these things, or they will support the African governments with money. Right. But at a price. Right. The Chinese are willing to build our stadiums. The Chinese are willing to donate weapons to our armies, right? But how is Africa going to pay back the Chinese? The Chinese will come after the mining industry. If you check in the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the Chinese have been heavily involved in mining in Africa. I'll give some examples from Zimbabwe. In the early 2000s, Zimbabwe discovered diamonds in the area called Chiazo. The diamonds were so close to the ground that they were so cheap to extract. For big companies, it was very cheap because even some individuals were also extracting them. But individuals were banned from extracting them, and it was illegal for them to do so. Only companies that were having licenses were allowed to do that. And the army was deployed to make sure that all the locals and all the people that are not part of these companies cannot extract these diamonds. Right. So I'll give an example of a company known as Ajin Diamond Company in Chiazo, right? In the Xizang Group Holdings. They were displacing people from their ancestral lands, right? And Xizang Group Holdings also did it in 2001 when they were displacing people in Chivu, Mashonaland East. Also in Mutoko when they were in Mutoko, but in Mutoko it was the Heijing company when they were mining black granite. Right? There was an eviction of people from their ancestral lands, right? Without any compensation. And to make the matters, and to make the situation worse, after people have been evacuated from their motherland, right? These companies, when they were extracting, when they were done, they just leave unreclaimed pits. They left slime dams there, right? And in Chiazo right now, and since maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, there have been malaria outbreaks because of these pits that were left around the communities. So when it rains, these ditches, these trenches are holding stagnant water, which has become a good breeding ground for mosquitoes. Then malaria is now a big threat in these areas. Right? So the Chinese will come as a quick fix solution. They will put food on our table, but taking resources out of the country. So what it means, we are just moving away from being beggars to beggars again. The only difference now is we are begging from a different dish. It's the same concept, it's the same process, it's the same system. But the difference now, we are begging from a different dish, of which the American companies that have been doing mining, they actually have done well in terms of development, roads, school. For example, Anglo America company has actually done a lot of development in many countries in Africa. I'm not saying they've been perfect, but they've done something tangible in the years that they operated. And they've tried to practice good safety, health, and environmental principles. But these Chinese that have arrived, go to Harare, go to Norton, they're just digging and they leave things like that when they're done. They don't reclaim the land, they don't care about the environment. When they're done, they go. Okay, now to conclude, I will talk about the long-term solution, the permanent solution that African countries or African governments have to start doing now, which is actually long overdue. They've said these things many times, but nothing has been really done on the ground. Policies have been written, but nothing has been really done on the ground, right? So the best way to solve this predicament that we are entering into is to transform the education system. If the education system is transformed, that will bridge the gap between theory and practice, to the extent that if it means some of the degrees, maybe in mining, that learners were taking 4 years studying theory, if it means they only do 2 years at school but specializing in the other 2 years with work-related learning, practical approach to education, that way we can actually come up with better graduates that can actually spearhead our mining industries. Because right now we are complaining about load shedding, but Zimbabwe, in the Zambezi Valley, South Africa, Zambia, there is nuclear lying. There's potential for nuclear energy because there's uranium in these countries. But load shedding is always a threat in these countries because there is no sophisticated technology to harness such energy that can actually solve our power crisis as a region. So, mining studies should be introduced in primary schools. They can start as general, broad. But as the learners move to high school, they start to specialize in different aspects of mining. By the time they reach university or they reach a tertiary education, for example the TVTs or the polytechnics, the learners are already well versed and they've already picked their career path. But now you find a university student doing a mining degree, but the mining degree is so broad that when they're done, it seems as if they know a little bit of everything, but they are masters of none. In reality, when such people go to the industry, it's like they are starting to learn again. And at the end of the day, it seems as if you're producing lecturers, not practitioners. Right. So as we move on, right. So if you sort the education systems, our biggest challenge in Africa will be gone. Currently, if you go to many universities, the learners are targeting, as soon as I'm done with my mining degree, I want to go to Saudi Arabia and get a job there. Because they know only a few will only get jobs in and around Africa. Because our mining is happening, but it cannot contain everyone who's coming out from universities. But still, those who are coming out, are they fully backed? Can they be grouped in a group of 10, in a group of 20? And if they are given a start by the government, can they start their own mining company? The chances that they will succeed is very limited. Why? Because also when these learners are being trained at universities, they are trained to be workers for a mine, not owners of a mine. So ultimately, what we are producing workers. And when our own employment market cannot absorb them, they will leave. Then we have brain drain. So you'll find many Africans are doing very well outside Africa, but struggling in Africa. What is the problem? The problem is the system. It's not promoting the African child to own the mining industry. Because currently the Chinese are taking over the mining industry. And also, if you think we have a lot of Chinese in Africa right now, watch in the next 18 months, the next 24 months, especially with this USAID that has been cut, they are going to flock as saviors. But they're not saviors. They are looters, to say the least. They are distractors of the environment, to say the least. Go to Shirugwe, go to Zishawani. Many locals are complaining. They've lost many cows, a lot of livestock, goats, cows, donkeys, that have fallen into these big ditches that were left open by the Chinese companies when they were done mining. Sometimes it happens during the night, sometimes during the day, but the locals, they have no equipment to take out these animals. Because some of them, they are deep, 10 meters, 15 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters. And these things are happening not only in Zimbabwe, but in many countries in sub-Saharan Africa. You go to DRC, the DRC scenario is very complicated than many people think. The DRC situation, people mainly talk about the M23, Rwanda, and other countries that are also coming to help them. But there are many other small rebel groups that are there that are sponsored by different people from different countries. I don't want to mention any country here for what? For personal or professional reasons, right? But if you go and do your own research, you'll find that most of these groups are actually well sponsored. They have modern army artillery, right? And they're in different groups. So they have territories that they dominate, that they control. And people that do mining there, they are protected by these guys. But once the mining is done, they sell the proceeds to the people that are controlling these zones. So this is the predicament that Africa is in right now. And unfortunately, our governments, to stay in power, to stay relevant, what they will do is to turn to the Chinese. China, please help us. Because they wouldn't want to embarrass themselves with, now we cannot supply ARVs to our people. Family planning pills, condoms, water projects, food donations. So the Chinese will be allowed to come and do food handouts to be the savior of the moment. So the Chinese will save the day, but they will steal the future. So the Chinese will help all these poor governments or these political leaders from different African countries that have been failing for years, that are failing right now to stay in power. Because they will bring these things to our doorsteps. They will bring these things to our tables, but at a cost. So it's up for our government, the policymakers in education, in mining, in health sector, to make the call. Should we take the short way, the easy way, the Chinese way? Or we take the long way, whereby instead of letting the Chinese run the economy, let's integrate with them to be able to harness their technology and bring it home. We bring it to our schools, we bring it to our universities, we bring it to our tertiary institutions like our TVTs, we bring it to our homes. That way it can be sustainable. But from what I have been seeing in the past 10 years, 15 years, our governments are going to be bank benchers whilst they are applauding the Chinese to serve them, to keep them in power, but at the cost of the African child. And the future of the African child will be stolen in our very eyes. I thank you. That's my story. I hope to meet you in the next episode as we talk more about things that are happening now and how it's going to affect Africa. And I'm mainly interested on the education system in Africa. So most of these issues that happen, I usually try to see how is it going to affect the education system, or how can the education system be the solution to the problems that we're facing. So my interest is not mainly on the USAID. Is it correct? Is it wrong? That's not my discussion. My discussion is, what can you do as Africans so that when we go on a table for a deal with anyone, we can speak on the same level. We can speak with our hands in the pocket, because we know we have our resources. We know we can harness our resources. We know we can process our resources. We know we can sell our resources and get the good value of our products. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm out. Thank you.